Hello, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lucy.
And I have no idea what we're doing now.
Aha. We're doing a special episode. But first, we have Patreons to thank. Caro Norris, Sunflower Float, something like that, Aria, NXC, and Adam Green. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, if that's the term.
Yes.
And today we're doing an episode on the Yeomen of the Guard.
Ah, yes, because they did not exist before Henry VII.
No, they were similar.
He made them.
Actually, it must have been very exciting researching the Yeomen of the Guard from primary sources because you have names and you have careers and you have histories. Right.
Yeah.
And up to a point you have personalities. Personalities you can sort of abstract from things that happen. So it must have been a real detective investigation. No official document on the formation of the Guard survives, if there ever was one. It might have been destroyed in a fire in the Guards' headquarters in St James's Palace in 1809. There's always a fire, isn't there? Always.
Always. A lot of family histories were lost during the Reformation because they burned the churches in some cases rather than just redoing them. If your church decided they weren't changing, it got burnt.
Mm-hmm. But we know it was created in 1485 by Henry VII. Francis Bacon said it was actually formed on the day of the coronation. And he made it sound like a really decisive action, but it smacked of desperation to me. You know, I'm king, now save me.
Oh, dear.
It obviously wasn't the first corps of bodyguards to the monarch. All kings had people to protect them. The main significance of Henry's bodyguards is that they still exist. There is still the Yeomen of the Guard. They don't do the same sort of job. Beefeaters.
No. Oh, they don't like being called beefeaters. I know that much.
Well, what are they going to do about it?
That's so mean. What a bully.
Editing Lucy here. The Yeomen of the Guard were called beefeaters, but the ones you'll be familiar with, the ones that show you around the Tower of London, are actually the yeoman warders of His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress. Both are called beefeaters, but they are distinct bodies of people. Edward IV had 24 yeomen of the Crown. Richard III cranked the numbers up to 135. You might be thinking, I wonder why he needs all those bodyguards. But Polydore Virgil tells us that Henry had 200. So
200? That's a lot more than now.
They were part of his household, so they should never leave his side. Not all of them, obviously, because that would be ridiculous. They'd be going around in a great big mob. But there would always be some.
Well, they kind of do. I mean, the household is huge. You're feeding tons of people, caring for tons of people.
Yeah, they just didn't all hover around him, protecting him from everybody. But there would have been some of them near him.
And yet, if it's 200 people, how did he know he could trust them? That's a lot of people to put your trust in.
Yes. Well, we will find out about some of them. And I don't recall there ever being any mention of anybody turning on him. So he must have chosen well.
Yeah.
But was he more at risk than Richard or Edward? Or did he feel himself to be? Because the first would be a reflection on his reign, the latter a reflection on his personality, perhaps. Both Virgil and Edward Hall said that Henry modelled the Guard on what he'd seen in the French court.
Makes sense. That's where he was for most of his life.
Yeah. Hall later wrote, quote, "which precedent men thought that he learned of the French king when he was in France. For men remember not any king of England before that time which used such a furniture of daily soldiers," unquote. I do like the phrase "a furniture of daily soldiers." Bacon said that Henry instituted for the security of his person, quote, a band of 50 archers under a captain to attend him by the name of Yeomen of his guard. It is thought that Henry followed the precedent of Louis XI, King of France, who 10 years previously had established himself a grand guard of 100 knights and 200 attendants, and the latter were armed as archers when in the battlefield. But at state ceremonials they carried a halbert of a peculiar shape, the hook at the back resembling the beak of a crow, unquote. Charles VII of France had a Scots company for protection, consisting of 25 archers of the body and 77 archers of the guard.
And they were super good.
And they were very loyal.
Yes. By super good, I mean they were very well battle worn. For all the, they fought alongside the king quite a lot during Louis XII's terms.
Well, Charles VII we came across in Louis XI's episode on Patreon, and so we might be able to see why he should trust Scotsmen rather than Frenchmen, I think.
Yes.
He was not a popular man in his own country.
Nope.
Louis XI added a further 100 gentlemen, each with 2 archers. And it's this group that was said to have influenced Henry's Yeomen of the Guard. De Ayala wrote to Ferdinand and Isabella saying that Henry, quote, would like to govern England in the French fashion but cannot, unquote, but he did get his French-style bodyguard. And he saw this guard as being a permanent structure to be in place at his son's, should he have one, he didn't know at that point, succession. But I wonder if it would ever have occurred to him in a million years that he would still have, they would still be around 540 years later.
Probably not.
The other French aspect of this guard was ostentatious display. They were all decked out in white and green and were intended to increase the magnificence of the court. Now, it didn't help Henry to have a load of ill-clad layabouts with rusty halberts shuffling around him. They had to be smart, well-armed and well-drilled. He was very sensibly thinking, right, what other people think of me is what they see. They don't know me.
Yes.
They've got to judge me by what they can see. So the better we all look, the better for all of us.
Yes. So bathe, damn it.
Yes. And smarten yourselves up. Henry conferred the title of Yeoman of the Guard as a proclamation to the people that he had selected his bodyguard not from the nobility, but from the class just below them. And he made it sound like an advantage, but I suspect that he didn't feel he could trust the nobility. Because why would they put themselves out to protect him when they might feel they had just as much of the right to the crown as he did?
Yes.
The first documentation we have about the Guard was in September 1485, so only a month or so into his reign. And these were granting offices to various named individuals. And the first named yeoman we have was John Fry, followed 2 days later by William Brown. Quote, William Brown, yeoman of the King's Guard, for good service that humble and faithful servant hath heretofore done unto us, as well beyond the seas as at our late victorious journey, unquote. So he'd been over in
with him.
Brittany.
Right.
And a lot of them were. 5 days after that, we read a letter patent for Owen ap Griffith.
Ooh, hi.
Yeah. The book I mainly relied on, The Yeoman of the Guard and the Early Tudors by Anita Hewardine, has a very useful section of biographies of the people mentioned in the book. But needless to say, infuriatingly, Owen ap Griffith isn't one of them. It might be Rhys ap Thomas's uncle. I can see no reason why it shouldn't be. So we'll assume it was.
We'll assume it was. You know, like great historians everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
In the first year, Henry made 40 men yeomen of the guard under the captaincy of Sir Charles Somerset. And Henry had great trust in Somerset, since later he would send him to the continent to negotiate terms for both Perkin Warbeck and Edward de la Pole. Since the guard was attached to the household, the responsibility for the protection of the king fell to the Lord Chamberlain. And at this time, as I said, Sir Charles Somerset, very much trusted. Yes. Later, of course, William Stanley and Lord Dobney. So it's no wonder Hugh Conway and Richard Nanfan were so worried, really. Mein Van.
Mein Van.
These first 40 men Henry entrusted to be his bodyguard must have been people he'd felt were totally loyal. And of the first 32 men, 6 were mentioned at having been at Bosworth, and 13 had been overseas with him. And the other 13 referred to had provided, quote, good and faithful service, unquote.
I wish they'd list what that good and faithful service was. Give us more. Not just good and faithful service. For all I know, you walk the dogs every day.
Well, they need walking. But I imagine they fought a rearguard action in England, or I wonder if they were suggested by Mum and Reginald Bray.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd been in Margaret Beaufort's
Mumsy
employ.
wants it.
Yes. I don't think I like him. Just take him. Just take him.
Yep.
Some of the guards were well-born men who had been in the service of aristocrats. We know that Roger Ellis was a former servant of the Marquis of Exeter. John Ford came from Daubney's household, and Thomas Broke came from the household of Edmund de la Pole. Lucky man.
Really? Mm-hmm. No kidding, he's lucky. He wasn't painted with the same brush.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He must have got out.
Yeah, sketchy. Everybody who was related, or it's not related, was in his service probably was terrified.
Well, I suppose this probably might have been early on in Henry's reign, so
when he was still
Edmund might not
loyal?
have blotted his copybook yet.
Okay.
Yes, I expect maybe Thomas Broke was put on far away from the king duties after that.
You get to stay in the closet.
Yes. I'm just locking you in. Is that all right?
You need to watch the wardrobe.
Yes.
Nobody can touch that.
The patents granted to the Yeomen of the Guards can be quite confusing because there were also 50 Yeomen of the Crown and 5 Yeomen of the Chamber. And it seems that some of the men appear in the list for more than one group. The Yeomen of the Crown and the Yeomen of the Chamber were older officers, and I think Henry kept them because he didn't want it to look as if he was sweeping everything aside and replacing it with something a bit Frenchified. He thought, well, I'd keep that as well.
He was not dumb. You've got other people that come in and they get rid of all the original people. And that just builds resentment. Henry's not doing that.
And everyone you've got is brand new to the job.
And doesn't know what to do.
No.
Yeah.
Due to the lack of documentation, we don't know how the guard was initially paid, but it could be by the king handing out officers in lieu of payment. That wasn't just Henry being stingy, although I can't imagine he was too upset about not having to part with money. It had been standard practice in previous reigns.
Well, that and the crown is pretty much bankrupt.
It is at the beginning, yeah.
We do have to remember that. They have no money.
Well, there's a problem came with this. It was discovered that people go off and actually fulfil their duties in other offices that have been given and weren't around to protect the king. So when absenteeism became a real issue, it was decided to make the officers at the discretion of the king. If they didn't do their duty towards Henry, they would be deprived of their other offices.
Oh, so you get to pick which one do you actually want to do?
Well, the Henry one comes first.
Yes.
The other one
Otherwise,
is,
you're
well,
in
look upon it as a hobby.
Hobby.
In 1493, a warrant exists telling a custom official in Southampton to give the guard an annual payment of £1,200. And there have been other occasions when we've wondered, why are they being told to pay for things? I'd love to understand the thinking behind it. What has it got to do with the port of Southampton? Maybe they had to call on the services of the guard. And Henry thought, oh, great, we'll get them to pay for it as well. I don't know. But there just seemed to be quite a few instances where strange groups of people pay for something that doesn't appear to have anything to do with them. From 1496, payments to the guard show up in John Heron's wonderful accounts. And from this time, the monthly payments vary, implying that they weren't being paid a flat rate, but according to what they needed to do, or who needed to do what. And interestingly, there are entries in the accounts for recompense for lost wages being paid to yeomen who were ill.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and one had a compensation for long sickness and the burning of his house. So, yeah,
Aw, so wait. They have they got long-term disability and I don't?
Well, he'd had a really awful year. He'd been ill,
how
and his
nice,
house
though.
burnt down.
Yeah, but if my house burned down, my job wouldn't pay for a thing.
No, that's true.
And I can only have a short-term disability. I can only be sick for like 5 weeks and then I'm out of any help.
Oh. Well, you should join the Yeomen of the Guard, obviously.
Yeah.
Men of the Guard could also, I bet you don't get this either, they could also be granted a corrody.
What is a cordy?
Well, in this case, it was dining rights in a village's house. Often it's not just dining rights, it's maintenance and pension.
What? So they could just order a villager to take you in?
They could order a monastery to pay for, to pay you a pension.
Oh, that cordy, right. Okay, I've read about this, but not in historical biography or anything. I learned about cordies in Brother Cadfile's murder mysteries.
Yeah, that figures.
They're really good, by the way.
Richard Freer was allowed to eat his dinner in Tame Monastery near Oxford, and Robert
Nice.
Palmer could have his at Bath Priory.
And you got well fed. It wasn't monastery food that was given to cordies. It was actual, like, higher up food.
Well, shouldn't a religious house be morally bound to feed people anyway, I thought?
They do, but not... I looked this up when I was reading the first Brother Cadfile, I think it was. The cordies originally started in 2 different ways. One was as they had not enough monks to do the work, then other servants would be brought in, and as they got older, they were given a corody when they retired, when they were no longer physically able to do the work, which was quite old. But they were only given the food that matched their rank. So a servant would get servant's food, and it would continue at the level. So, like, if you were just the fire pit boy or whatever, you would not get very good food. You were given food for each rank. And then you had cordies that people paid for. So people would, this was most common when they didn't have an heir. They would make the monastery their heir, turn everything over, and they would get a cordy. But if they were a noble, they would continue to get treated as a noble with clothing, food, care. So you wouldn't get the same food as a servant. Like porridge wasn't going to be served to you. You were going to get venison and whatnot.
I suppose the monasteries thinking about how much they're going to get after you've gone. Really, aren't they?
Yes, because they now own that land forever. And before the Reformation, as soon as land was given to the monastery, it never again could return to the crown. Because you're now taking it back from the Pope.
Right.
So that's why the monasteries got so big. It wasn't just that they were given land by the government or they bought it. It was because people who didn't have heirs were taking the land out of the taxing coffers and giving it to the monasteries and the church.
I wonder why Sir John Fastolf didn't do that.
I don't know.
That's what Sheeters were sent out to do, wasn't it? To check people who died intestate.
Yeah. Where did your lands go? It can't go to the monasteries. It can't go to the church. That's why the church became so wealthy. I mean, over time, they're the largest landholder in England, beyond the king, I believe, by the time of the Reformation.
They still own a lot of land.
Yeah, cordy. I was like, what's a cordy?
Yeah.
I remember that word. I'm familiar with that word. Okay, we're good.
We were just talking about how people being paid from various diverse places. 3 yeomen of the guard were paid £20, which was a sum forfeited by a carter who had failed to appear in court.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is an awful lot.
For a carter?
But what he'd been accused of initially, I don't know. Must have been something fairly major for 20 quid.
That's years and years worth of work for a carter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, another £20 came from the fine William Hurd, keeper of the jail in Norwich Castle, had to pay following the escape of a prisoner indicted for murder.
Yeah, being a jailer is not, it's a risky business.
It is a risky business, yes. Yeah, no wonder James Blount ran away with his prisoner. He
Yes.
probably thought, I can't stay here, I'll be in such trouble.
They're going to take everything.
But it's odd. It's almost as if they arrive in, you're about to put the £20 into the box under Henry's bed. And they say, oh, hang on a minute, I need to pay the... Oh, well, here we are, I have this 20. There doesn't seem to be any link between any of these things. As we saw in the Welsh Connection episode, money was also provided so that the Guard could celebrate St David's Day, showing how many of them were Welsh. And if you look at the list of names, it's a real app fest. There's so many apps. And Henry VIII continued this practice as well. And members of the Guard were given payment towards their wedding as well. Although, as we discovered, John Blank was given money for his wedding. It seems something that you do for servants and obviously the Guard as well. As they reached the end of their career as yeomen, some men were given appointments more suited to their age. Henry Spencer was made one of the Knights of the King's Alms, ALMS, in the Royal College of Windsor. John Lufton was made an almsman in Canterbury Cathedral. And assistance was given to widows of yeomen too. I don't know which obscure place paid for all this, but...
It wouldn't have come out of Henry's box.
No, I don't know. Chessington Zoo, perhaps. Some of the nobility rewarded the yeomen, but that could backfire. The Duke of Buckingham had been very generous to them, but this was used in evidence against him at the time of his downfall in 1521. Why was he so generous to them, they asked. Was he trying to turn them against the king and make his own private army?
Yeah.
The nobility could hand out money to them for specific purposes. Henry Courtenay, Earl of Devon, gave fourpence, quote, to a yeoman of the Guard in the King's chamber for keeping the gauges while my lord played at shuffleboard, unquote, which presumably is keeping the score.
Oh, okay.
But it's so strange that should be in the accounts. I mean, presumably the Courtenay just handed fourpence to them and said, oh, here's something for your trouble. And there it is, it gets written in the accounts and we still know about it.
Poor little scribe runs around following them. This much to them, a pence to them, a pence to them. Goodness.
How much did he give you? Right, okay, just jot it down.
And now we're looking at our budgeting and we're like, what did I spend that money on? At least mine.
Well, we know that Courtenay was playing at shuffleboard. In September 1511, two brothers were inducted into the Yeomen of the Guard. The third brother couldn't join because he had been executed in 1497.
Wow, so he brought in people that might be resentful.
Well, these two brothers were Bartholomew and John Flamanck. And the missing one was Thomas, who had led the Cornish Rebellion. Yeah.
Ooh.
John was Sir Richard Nanfan's son-in-law, who had blabbed to Henry about the conversation that took place in Nanfan's house at Calais, despite taking an oath to say he wouldn't. And that was 5 years earlier than John becoming yeoman. And it was all to do with an argument he had with his father-in-law, wasn't it, that he decided to narc on him. And we can maybe shed a little bit more light on that, since we hear that John was dismissed from his post, I'm not sure what it was, by Sir Gilbert Talbot, for misconduct involving, quote, a fray in the market, unquote.
Oh.
So maybe he was just a particularly quarrelsome person. But maybe it was him knocking on Nanfan that Henry thought,
got in the position.
Yeah,
you're loyal.
He's obviously all right, yeah. And it shows that Yeoman could hold another job because John became Member of Parliament for Bodmin in 1512. And we know he was still a yeoman in 1520 because he accompanied Henry VIII in that capacity to the Field of the Cloth of Gold. Mm-hmm. And Flamanck wasn't the only yeoman to become an MP. Anyway, what was the Yeoman of the Guard expected to do? One of Henry VII's heralds said they were, quote, evermore standing by the ways and passages upon a row in both the sides, where the King's Highness should from chamber to chamber, or from one place to another, at his goodly pleasure be removed, unquote. And I suppose that's the sort of thing you see in films, isn't it, with people just standing either side of the door. So,
Got it. Okay.
yeah. So plenty of scope for job satisfaction there.
That would be the most boring thing ever.
You sort of assume that they must be really low down the pecking order, but if they're yeomen of the guard, they're not.
They're not. No.
No. They must feel there's so much kudos with the job that just, that's some way goes to offset the boredom.
Yeah, because at least in movies, they don't talk ever.
No.
They have to stand there silently and not move.
Mind you, they would have to pay the actor if they did talk.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, if you're just standing at a door too, have you ever tried to stand completely still for a while?
I can't do it. I'm a fidgeter.
Well, it doesn't matter if you are a fidgeter or not. You actually start feeling physically ill after a little while. You have to move. Your body is not built to stand still. Wellington's armchairs. So if you are at the Tower of London, which we will see when we go there, there are things called Wellington's armchairs. They're like spikes that you can put your arms and your body into to sort of hold you up to take the weight off your legs so you can stop feeling sick. And you see the guard now will have to sort of walk around and stamp about a bit. It's to stop them from passing out.
Yes.
You will pass out if you stand still for long enough. They mentioned that with... Where did I first look at that and then start researching? It was a model. Somebody had set their model to stand while they were painting them, and it was for hours and hours and hours, and their model passed out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I don't think it would take that long either.
Couple of hours?
God, not sure I can manage it for a couple of hours.
Yeah. Definitely not me. I am a fidgeter too. Give me some knitting. I could stand there for a long time.
Yes. Perhaps that's what they should do to the, what they call the household cavalry. They're standing there for hours.
Yeah. Knitting for the poor. Knitting socks for the troops. Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, well, yes,
World
knitting
War
for
I and II?
for the men at the front, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has got way off target.
Welcome to our regular day of recording.
Yes, welcome to Waffle. Anyway, more specifically, when Catherine of Aragon arrived and had to watch interminable pageants as she processed through London, with those bloody trumpeters blowing in her ears all the time.
She comes by, they ask her, do you take what? Do you take your husband Arthur? What?
Hey! If you were to look up, quote, above, in windows, leads, gutters and battlements stood many of the yeomen of the guard, unquote. And that must have been quite intimidating, having these people, their full livery, standing up on the roofs with their bows and arrows. Other duties were of a less military nature. They were also responsible for carrying torches when the king went to the chapel, setting up and taking down the table in the great chamber, bringing water so the diners could wash their hands, and testing the king's food for poison.
Really, they brought the water. I always thought that would be a lower servant.
You would think so. Also, they had to make the king's bed. And the bed thing changed over time. Yeah. Initially, a yeoman with a dagger had to search the straw, quote, that there be no untruth therein, unquote. I love Tudor talk.
Yes. I was wondering about that because if you stuck the straw isn't just straw. It's in a cloth called ticking, which is like a tightly woven fabric, so it doesn't poke through. Aren't you destroying that fabric by stabbing it with a dagger?
Well, it may explain why a later version was that the yeoman should, quote, leap upon the bed and roll up and down, unquote.
Yeah!
Some of them had to, stand outside doors and things for hours and hours on end, and some of them got to jump up and down on a bed. Go, I'll do the bed one.
Yeah, as long as there are no knives in it.
Yeah.
Lots of boredom followed by short bits of super exciting parts. Terror. Somebody just like that. Most of it's boring except for sharp moments of terror.
Moments of terror, yeah. Throughout the night, yeomen were to check the king's palace, looking for fire, affray, treason, and interestingly, noise.
Noise.
Going, shh, keep it down, you lot. The king's asleep.
I thought it was going to be the opposite. Like how when you've got a lot of little kids, if it goes silent, you know something's wrong.
Yes, you do. You think, what
What's
are they
going on?
doing?
What are they doing? Run.
2 yeomen, John Pearce and John Belson, were given the job of brushing and airing the yeomen's jackets. And at Henry's funeral, it was the yeomen of the guard who carried the coffin. Away from court, their duties were as messengers, carrying the king's correspondence, and they were to apprehend and guard prisoners. And in Henry VIII's reign, it was the duty of the yeomen to take inventories of the religious houses that were to be dissolved, seeing how much Henry could expect to make out of them.
Gosh, I can't imagine honestly being Catholic, and by honestly I mean fervently, like actually believing in it, and being told you have to go to a monastery and find out how much money I'm getting out of destroying it. Wow.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is absolutely shocking.
Yes.
Weapons. The weapons they carried were mainly bows and arrows and halberds, and later javelins. And these were provided by the king, and the swords, which don't appear in the account, so presumably they had to provide them themselves. The pictures show them with swords. So I got the
provide
picture.
Your clothing, but not the sword.
No, you've got to go out and get them yourself. As to what they wore, there was talk of armour, but I can't imagine them clanking about in full armour. I should imagine it meant some padded thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the marriage between Catherine and Arthur, the yeomen wore, quote, large jackets of damask, white and green, goodly embroidered both on the breasts before and also on their backs behind, with round garlands of vine branches, beset before richly, with spangles of silver and gilt, and in the middle a red rose, beaten with the goldsmith's work, with bright halberds in their hands, unquote.
Gosh, that's expensive.
They were not undercover, are they?
No.
That is a lot of stuff.
Sparkles. But gold. Gold given to... wow. When did it change to red? Because now they wear red.
Coming to that, yes. Whereas if you look at the picture of the Field of the Cloth of Gold, which is on our website, and which hangs in the Wolsey Room, Hampton Court Palace, if the men surrounding Henry VIII are yeomen, they are wearing red. They're carrying halberds. They look a bit lax, actually. They're all chatting to each other and sort of wandering along beside him. They're not marching, are they?
One of them looks like he's posing, like, look at me, I am fantastic.
But why are they wearing red? Because they shouldn't have been. They should have been wearing green and white. The painting was made over 25 years later, possibly as much as 50 years later. And it has been restored, and some of the colours changed. But a restorer wouldn't change green and white to red. That does seem a bit much. Wolsey's retinue wore red, but Edward Hall tells us that Henry's did wear white and green.
White and green.
However, 6 years after the Cloth of Gold, so that's 1526, Henry VIII changed the colour of the livery to red. And it was quite an expensive changeover. It needed 213 and a half yards of red broadcloth, costing £56, 18 shillings and 8p.
Jeez. Why would he change it?
I don't know, maybe it just looked... I don't know, green and white is a bit insipid, isn't it? Red has got more punch to it.
Well, it's also more aggressive. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Red cars get more tickets than any other colour.
Do they?
Yeah.
What about black cars?
I don't know.
Well, I was wondering, when the painting was done, the artist may have said, bring me some yeomen of the guard to paint, when they all turned up, and they were in their red costumes, because it's after the changeover.
I do find it very interesting that they're wearing... Now, I'm looking at it. They're wearing red at the top, but the leggings, or socks, I don't know what they call them. But
I'm not sure what they are, but...
They're black, yellow, white. They're all different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think next season we might do an episode on this painting because there's so much to it, isn't there?
There is so
Including a
much.
dragon.
It's a little hard to do an episode on a... Yes. It's a little hard to do an episode on a visual painting, though.
Well, we did the Northern Renaissance.
Yes. We can try to describe it. Something's on... Never mind. Wait. We'll wait until we actually do the episode on it. I'm noticing so many things that I didn't before because I've got it zoomed in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should imagine there's a lot to talk about on it. The life of a member of the Yeomen of the Guard wasn't all jumping on beds and brushing jackets. England didn't have a standing army, and one of the reasons for this was the expense of keeping the garrisons in the Welsh and Scottish marches. There wasn't enough money to keep an army on top of all that lot.
No. Hence why you have the Earls of the Marches. Lords of the Marches, sorry.
We know how Henry VII was intent on abolishing the retinues of the nobility, so they couldn't start up the Wars of the Roses again. Now, being Henry, he was rather more pragmatic than just a blanket ban. He did allow certain knights and peers, presumably the ones who'd proved their loyalty, and again, as you say, the Marcher Lords, I guess, to
Marcher
retain a
Lords,
specific
thank you.
number of men. These licences lasted, quote, during the king's pleasure and no longer, unquote. So as soon as he stops being pleased...
Yep.
I don't know what happened to these men when they were no longer needed. They just went back to their day job, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it enabled Henry to have an army that he could call upon and he could trust when it was needed at no expense to himself.
Yeah.
So those people who were accused of keeping a retinue, like Lord Bergaveni, were actually guilty of keeping a retinue without a licence, because you could have one, but you had to have a licence.
Right.
But this meant that an army could be mustered relatively quickly, and the yeomen of the guards had to be ready to fight in that army. And it was the job of the clerk of ordnance to call together all gunners, and they had to demonstrate their proficiency. And he had then to report how many were proficient and how many were just rubbish, so the king didn't waste money paying the rubbish ones. And was, quote, not deceived in time of need, unquote. But then again, if you don't want to go to war, that's what you do. You constantly miss when you have your gun test.
You drop it instead of fire it. Throw the grenade backwards.
Yep. I wonder how many of them did that. Several yeomen served in the garrison at Calais, and these were much sought after posts since they offered a regular wage. They were also left as a garrison in Tournai when it was valiantly captured by Henry VIII. There were 5,000, of whom 400 were yeomen of the guard. So we can see the number has leapt up from Henry VII's 200 men that he had before. A rumour got around that the army's pay was to be paid in arrears rather than in advance, and so they'd lose a month's pay, and the soldiers mutinied. All except, according to Edward Hall, the yeomen of the guard. So that either meant they were extra loyal, or that their pay was paid separately in advance. There was one exception. The ringleader of the revolt was a yeoman of the guard, Davy ap Howell.
You really don't want them to revolt, though, because they're the ones keeping you safe.
Yes. Maybe that's why they said to them, don't worry, but we're going to keep paying you the same. Don't panic.
Yeah, just don't say anything to anybody else.
But it shows there was recognition for the soldiers' grievances, since the plan to pay in arrears was abandoned. And also, in 1518, Wolsey wanted to pay the garrison half yearly to bring them in line with other garrisons, and he wrote the gentlemen constables and corporals asking if they would be happy with that. Will it cause trouble?
Yes,
He's too sensible
half
just to
yearly?
barge in.
Could you imagine trying to budget for 6 months?
I was thinking that. As a soldier, you're being fed and housed.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe you send it all back home anyway.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, but you still have to buy your sword. It's a one-time.
You have to buy your sword, yes. I mean, that makes it difficult, doesn't it? Because maybe you can only afford a tin one or something. I don't know.
You make it out of cardboard.
Yes.
You go to pull it out of the scabbard and it folds.
on top of their military activities, they could also take posts in local governments. Sheriffs, sheeters, coroners and justices of the peace. And presumably it was in this capacity that John Flamanck became an MP. Also, they might be employed as bailiffs, foresters, rangers, keepers or constables of castles, jailers and tax collectors. And we have information on specific jobs done by members of the Guard. Robert Rake was made keeper of Fremantle Park in Hampshire, and one of his jobs, which was paid 5 marks a year for life, was, quote, conveying to the park by pipes and carts a sufficient supply of water for the game and wild animals there, it having come to the King's knowledge that game and wild animals of Fremantle Park often die from want of water in seasons of drought, unquote. So we have an extraordinary amount of detail for this one man.
Yeah. I love
and his
that.
job to bring water to the wild animals.
Well, they're hunted, right?
Well, they've got separate game and wild animals. Would that be? So how would you get to become a yeoman of the Guard? Initially, they were chosen from Henry's fellow exiles in Brittany and France. And they were also chosen on personal recommendation.
That would be scary, actually. Because you're not just recommending somebody for, say, cleaning something. You're recommending them as somebody to trust for the king. If that person does anything wrong, they're definitely coming after you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, later it became a generational thing. Dad was in the Guard, so little Jimmy became a member too. So,
which isn't the best way to choose people, honestly.
Not necessarily, no.
No.
But then they have a great faith in that, really, don't they? I mean, that's what your royal family's all about, isn't it?
Yes.
Regardless of ability. Anyway, what sort of background do these men have? It varied greatly. Some were relatively wealthy farmers and landowners. John Flamanck was assessed on land worth £20 in Bodmin. Mind you, you could be charged that for not turning up in court, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
But many of the yeomen were assessed on wages alone. But some came from families who had the right to bear coats of arms. So, I mean, that's quite a wide range of people. I mean, I think yeoman covers quite a broad spectrum of people.
It gives you respect, but not necessarily an indication of actual rank or income. Which is surprising. That's usually one of the requirements of any position, is that you are of either a certain rank or you have a certain income. Interesting.
No, I think loyalty is the key one.
Yeah. But how do you measure loyalty?
Yeah.
It's a guess. Ooh.
Yeah, and he must have assumed that William Stanley would be loyal. I mean, he'd given him everything. We hear something about these men's lives through that wonderful institution for historians, the law courts.
Yes.
We can read petitions addressed to the king for various problems. Humphrey Acton had been part of the garrison in Tournai, but when he got back to court, he wasn't paid for a year because his correct name hadn't been written on the documents. We think of something as that being the bane of our life now, but even then... John Catcott of Batcombe in Somerset petitioned the king in the Star Chamber because of the damage done to his hedges by a riotous group of 20 people. In fact, we don't know how or why his hedges got damaged. But I remember we came across this in another episode. I can't remember which. It was almost a matter of form to claim that the damage had been done by rioters because you went straight to the top court. You didn't have to wallow about in the lower courts. And we have a few examples of yeomen who were pardoned for murder. We don't know all the details of the case. We know how infuriating the law courts are. You get almost to the end, you turn to the last page, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Either they were given special dispensation because they were yeomen, or they managed to prove self-defence.
I wish we had transcripts. You could look up the transcript of the whole trial.
Yes, from beginning to end.
With the judge saying, I just need you to say this, and then you're free. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I can't imagine that they were given carte blanche to kill anybody that they chose, since a yeoman called Richard Newbold killed one of Lord Willoughby's servants in Westminster Palace, And the records show that although he was in the king's greatest favour and was a special archer, he was hanged at the palace. And his body left there for 2 days as a deterrent for others.
Oh,
So being in the guards didn't give you an automatic pardon.
that's disgusting.
We have some examples of the members of the guard being used as a rent-a-thug force. And this is an event you will probably remember. Sir Richard Empson
Yes.
was accused of using members of the guard to intimidate Robert Plumpton at the court
Yes.
of York Assizes.
He did it.
Quote, "Divers of the guard of our sovereign lord the king, arrayed in the most honourable livery of the said guard," unquote. So not only did they turn up to threaten Plumpton, they were still wearing their yeoman uniforms.
Goodness.
Now, did Henry sanction this? Or does it show that the yeomans could be bought?
Which,
You know, I need
again,
a certain
loyal.
number of people.
Hello. You're supposed to be loyal.
Well, it's not being unloyal to Henry to go after someone completely different.
Ah, dear. I don't know. Having that many people, you are not going to find everybody is loyal.
No. But then I suppose you haven't got them all around you at all times. You probably have your most trusted ones
Yes.
in court with you.
And
the other
all of
ones
them
joining
claiming
the
I'm
army.
the most trusted of Henry.
I'm closest to the king.
Yes. You are my favourite. You are my favourite.
Well, that was a brief glimpse into the early years of the Yeomen of the Guard. And these days, obviously, they show you around the Tower of London.
Yeah.
I don't suppose a Yeoman of the Guard has rolled about on the king's bed for quite some time. Not officially, anyway.
Why are they called beefeaters?
Can't remember.
Okay, let's look that up. Why are the yeomen warders called beefeaters? We've got a couple of different reasons for the beefeaters.
I seem to remember it being a bit vague.
Yeah, so it's possible that it could be to a daily allowance of beef that they received for being in the household. Other theory is that it might be a French buffetier, which was a name for waiter, but that doesn't make sense.
No.
Unless, well, you did say they were brought the water
Yeah,
to
some of
people
them did the
dinner.
waiting at the tables. But that's not what they're mostly known for, is it? I don't think.
No, but they did attend meals.
It seems odd that they're acting as waiters and standing on the top of the buildings with their halberds poised, ready to protect Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah. And I can imagine that you do want them well fed, but beef wasn't the big thing. It would have been venison.
Maybe venison's only for the top echelons.
Probably. I don't know, but interesting. That's the end of our episode.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh dear.